Welcome to the Image of History channel. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the gritty, scandalous world of Wild West prostitutes, soiled doves, brothel queens, and infamous madams who sold pleasure in a land of lawless men. One of the most famous women of the Wild West was Calamity Jane, but not many people are aware that she once worked as a prostitute. She famously wore men's clothes and had a reputation as a sharpshooter. The only thing that matched her skills with a gun was her love of whiskey, as she was often out drinking and out shooting men. Later in life, she joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West show and became a notorious storyteller, often exaggerating stories about herself. For instance, she said she earned the name Calamity Jane by rescuing a military captain from an ambush, but some say it was because she caused trouble wherever she went. Unlike Calamity Jane, Dora Hand was a graceful and refined woman. She was a beloved singer, actress, and dance hall performer in Dodge City, Kansas. She was killed accidentally by a drunk cowboy who wanted to assassinate the mayor of Dodge City. Dora was sleeping in the mayor's cabin that fateful night and unfortunately caught the bullet that was meant for the mayor. Jenny Rogers was a powerful and wealthy madam who built one of the most successful brothels in the Wild West. Although she started out as just a prostitute, she quickly rose to prominence as a madam. She married multiple times under fake names to protect her assets from her greedy husbands. Speaking of husbands, Kitty Leroy was a prostitute who was famous for having multiple. She was one of the most fearless and unpredictable women of the Wild West. Kitty reportedly married at least 5 times, often in dramatic fashion. Yet marriage never stopped her from having other affairs. Her final husband was so jealous of her wild ways that he shot her to death to end her promiscuity. Josephine Airy, also known as Chicago Joe, was another influential madam of the Wild West who suffered a tragic end. During the Gold Rush era, she set up a saloon and brothel to cater to minors, gamblers, and outlaws. Unfortunately, her empire declined and she suffered financial losses before dying broke at the age of 55. Unlike many madams, Julia lived alone and worked independently, rather than running a brothel. She catered to wealthy minors and became a local celebrity due to her kind heart and glamorous lifestyle. Shockingly, she was found strangled to death in her home, which shocked the entire town. Unlike the madams with tragic endings, Laura Evans was a legendary madam who outlasted the frontier era, continuing her business well into the 20th century. At the age of 25, Alice abandoned her husband and daughter to become a prostitute. She started in St. Louis. After a few years, she graduated to Leadville, Colorado, where there were tons of minors and she could earn more money for her services. Years later, she moved to Salida, where she worked her way up to be madam of her parlor house. She eventually became a full-time madam and owned her own parlor house. The most fascinating thing about Laura Evans was that she didn't retire until she was almost 90 years old. She ran her brothels for several decades, surviving through the First and Second World Wars and even a deadly flu pandemic. Lou Graham wasn't just a brothel owner, she was a shrewd investor who quietly helped shape the future of Seattle. With her income from prostitution, Lou invested heavily in real estate, becoming one of the largest landowners in the city. Although she ran an illegal business, she secretly funded schools, charities, and public works. Many of the city's early schools and public projects were funded by her taxes and donations. However, when she died, she was betrayed by the system. The government seized most of her fortune, claiming she had no legal heirs. Eleanor Dumont was one of the most famous female gamblers and madams of the Wild West. She was a refined and intelligent woman who made a name for herself in a male-dominated world. Eleanor first made money as a gambler, then she went on to set up an upscale gambling parlor catering to wealthy minors. She ran successful businesses as she traveled across several towns, gambling and setting up brothels. Unfortunately, she lost all of her wealth when she fell in love with and married a man who conned her out of all her money. Maddie Blaylock ran away from home as a teenager to avoid farm work. She thought she would get a better life on the streets, but instead ended up becoming a sex worker. During her years as a prostitute, she met Wyatt Earp, who was working as a lawman in Kansas. She fell in love with him and became his common-law wife. They were living together in Tombstone, Arizona during the events leading up to the gunfight at the OK Corral in 1881. After the shooting, Wyatt left Arizona with another woman, leaving Maddie heartbroken. She turned to drugs to cope with her depression, struggled with addiction, and worked as a prostitute again to survive. A few years later, she died from an overdose. Josephine Marcus was the woman whom Wyatt had abandoned Maddie for when he left Tombstone, Arizona. Just like Maddie, Josephine ran away from her family as a teenager to seek adventure in the West. She worked as a prostitute before arriving in Tombstone and becoming a local theater actress. During her stay in Tombstone, Josephine was in a relationship with Sheriff Johnny Behan. But when she met Wyatt Earp after a chance encounter, the two fell in love. After the gunfight at OK Corral, they both moved out of Arizona and she became his common-law wife. Etta Place was best known for her affair with Sundance Kid, a member of the Wild Bunch gang. Today, her story is quite mysterious because nobody knew what happened to her after Sundance got killed in a shootout. Unlike Etta Place, Laura Bullion was a member of the infamous Wild Bunch gang. Although she was a prostitute during her early teenage years, she was more known for her role in train and bank robberies that she participated in with the gang. She was eventually arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison for forgery and robbery. After her release, she turned away from crimes and moved to Memphis, where she lived quietly as a seamstress and a real estate agent. Pearl Hart ran away from home as a teenager and got married to a gambler. However, her husband was abusive and she ended up running away from him too. She turned to prostitution, gambling, and petty crime to make ends meet. Eventually, she had a partner in crime with whom she robbed stagecoaches. Pearl would hold the victims at gunpoint while her partners stole their money. The pair were eventually captured and sentenced to prison. After Pearl got out, she disappeared from the public eye and lived a quiet life under an assumed name. Bessie Colvin was a beautiful sex worker who was the reason Etta Clark almost killed Alice Abbott, her former and rival madam. Bessie had decided to quit Alice's establishment for Etta Clark's. However, when Alice learned this, she tried to get Bessie back. During the fight, Etta Clark pulled out a gun and shot Alice in the stomach. Fortunately, Alice survived the shot. Poker Alice was raised in a wealthy, educated family, unlike many names on this list. She attended a boarding school and was highly literate, which was uncommon for many women of the time. Her husband died in a mining accident, leaving Alice to turn to poker and faro for survival. Later in life, she opened her own saloon and brothel where gambling, whiskey, and prostitution thrived. Even into her 70s, Alice continued to gamble and run her saloon. Big Nose Kate was the first known prostitute of Tombstone, Arizona. She earned the nickname Big Nose Kate because she had a big nose, but some reports have claimed that it was because she was quite nosy. Kate was more popular for her relationship with Doc Holliday, one of the most famous gunfighters. Their relationship was passionate, toxic, and violent, but they remained together for years despite her profession. One time when Doc was arrested in Texas, Kate set a barn on fire to create a diversion, allowing him to escape. After Doc's death, she eventually settled in Arizona and married a blacksmith. She then lived a quiet life before dying at the age of 90. Pearl DeVere was one of the most famous and extravagant madams in Colorado, running an elite brothel in Cripple Creek during the Gold Rush era. She was known for her lavish lifestyle, expensive tastes, and exclusive clientele. Pearl charged $250 a night for her services, ensuring that only the richest men could afford to visit. That amount is worth over $8,000 today. Another madam with a lasting legacy is Belle Breezing. Belle had a rough childhood. Her mother ran a boarding house, and by the time she was 15, she was working as a prostitute in a well-known brothel. By her mid-20s, she had established her own brothel, which became the most elite in Lexington, catering to wealthy businessmen, politicians, and horse racing elites. She also had powerful connections that protected her, making her one of the most influential women in Kentucky. Despite all these, she died a lonely death years after her brothels had been shut down by reformers. However, her legend lives on as her story has inspired movies and books like Gone with the Wind. Subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed this video and want to see more old pictures with exciting stories just like this.